I'm Beck, and I'm here with the Local Offer Podcast, and today we're checking out the MCC CPP Inclusion event.
Having a more relaxed start to the day, also generally ensuring that child's been fed in the morning and is ready to learn.
They'll be known to us that they're not very inclusive, then they get a change of staff and they become very inclusive.
Welcome to the Manchester Local Offer Podcast. In each episode, we'll bring you the latest news about Local Send services, interviews with people sharing their experiences, and highlight resources you might have missed.
And we're back for another episode. I'm inside the studio, and I'm here with, as always, Caprice, who is a graphic designer at SendCode, and she's also won a load of awards. She's very talented and puts me to shame every week.
And I'm joined by sit-down comedian and Instagram famous, Beck.
In this episode, you'll hear all about services, Changemakers, North Manchester Early Help, Rosie Outreach, and many more.
We went to the Manchester City Council Change Programme Partnership Inclusion Group, where we had the opportunity to talk to different Send services.
Like Caprice said, we got to interview a lot of Send services. One of those was a young person who was talking about working with the Changemakers, and he had some really interesting points. So why don't you just take a listen? I'm Beck, and I'm here with the Local Offer Podcast, and today we're checking out the MCC CPP Inclusion event. So first of all, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
So my name is Joseph Mendy. I am 23 years old. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
And so Joseph, like this event, I don't really know much about what this event does. So what is it and what have you been doing today at this event?
Today's event has mainly been about talking about inclusion. And today I delivered a presentation with the Greater Manchester Youth Network, with whom I'm here with today, to talk about what the Changemakers group is all about and what we've done.
Okay, and can you go a little bit more into detail about what the Changemakers in your presentation was about, like one of the key elements?
So what I've talked about in the presentation, with help of Joe, who is one of the facilitators, staff members at JMYN, we talked about who the Changemakers are. It was a group of young people with a disability and as well as neurodivergence young people, age 14 to 25. And we've talked about some of the projects we've done recently, like the democracy projects, for example. We also talk about how we learn new skills and make new friends, and how we organise our own trips and activities.
And I was just wondering, what was your school experience like, and how would you have made that like better and more inclusive if you could go back and direct your own school journey?
My high school experience, because my high school was a specialist support school, so it's different from the mainstream schools. So the experience I had was overall positive. Had good memories from my high school.
Good.
If I was to make it any more inclusive and but less stimulating, because there used to be a thing where fidget toys, these fidget spinners first became a thing, but then they had to be banned in my school because pupils were too busy messing about when it's meant to help those with neurodivergence and disabilities to concentrate.
Yeah.
But I feel like neurodivergent students may not focus for a long period of time if they don't have anything to fidget with.
That was really interesting, some of the things Joseph was talking about. Obviously, he works with the Changemakers, but I think one of the main points he brought up was about fidget spinners. What do you think about that, Caprice? Because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I had a similar experience in my school where most fidget toys and spinners and even noise cancelling headphones were banned in my school as well. And you know what? In class, when I was in school, I didn't have fidget toys personally, and I didn't really like them, but I used to draw on a piece of paper to concentrate while in class, and I would get told off all the time just for drawing, which is ridiculous, I think. And even just fidget toys are, I think, are less distractive than somebody actively writing when not looking at teachers. So having something like a fidget spinner just under the table, at least you're making eye contact with teacher.
It's not like a music box, and if it helps kids concentrate, then it's something they should do. Like, obviously with my school I didn't have that, where they did allow they actively encouraged fidget cubes and fidget spinners, and it did help a lot of the kids. Very interesting point from Joseph there, and obviously people should be allowed to express themselves in the way they feel comfortable, and whatever helps them when they're neurodivergent should be used as an advantage, not a disadvantage. And if you actually I'm just guessing, if you looked into stats on this and how much fidget cubes and fidget spinners help, it's probably a lot. I think we should move on to the next service we got to interview.
The North Manchester Early Help.
So let's take a listen. Hello, if you'd just like to introduce yourself before we start.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Kiwi. I am a mum of 3. I live in Trafford and I work for North Manchester Early Help as well.
What's the most helpful adaptation or support you or your child has received, or that you've given out in your professional career?
So I was thinking the question in terms of education based initially, and a lot of the things that my families that I work with, when they've had issues around children struggling with overwhelm in school, some of the most basic ones that have worked really well are delayed starts. So not having to enter the school with hundreds of other pupils, and that's worked in both primary and secondary. And also in that vein, also breakfast clubs. So having a more relaxed start to the day, also generally ensuring that child's been fed in the morning and is ready to learn.
What are some free or inexpensive strategies you think we could use to help better support inclusion?
So the things that I said before that I've felt have worked, which are low or no cost, is breakfast club, because generally they're hugely subsidised or offered free from schools. Obviously, I know the school has to cover their costs, but it's already in place. And yeah, I've also found little things like a timeout pass, certainly in high schools, has worked for children that are overstimulated or feeling overwhelmed. Breakfast clubs, after school clubs. Uniform adaptations can seem so small, but schools are, or from my experience, have been so reluctant to do these things because it's policy. And that issue then escalates, certainly with Blazers.
Yeah.
A lot of children with additional needs, neurodiverse children, struggle with the texture, with obviously having sensory needs. It's a massive struggle to be forced to keep that on all day. So it's just about understanding that it's really not necessary.
It's very old-fashioned that schools are still stuck in that you got to wear a blazer. No one in the workforce anymore goes to work in a suit, really, unless you're in like a really corporate world. So I think it'd be better to like make good choices, look smartish, feel free to wear what you want to wear. I totally agree with that. So that was North Manchester Early Help. The person we interviewed brought up some really interesting points. So I think one of the points that this person that we interviewed from North Manchester Early Help brought up was that later start times in schools could help kids with overwhelm and just generally help them. And I believe this to be true, because I didn't have that in school. Obviously, we started at normal time roughly. School started at 9 o'clock. You're in for 8:30 probably. I think that would have helped me as a student. I think it would have just given me a minute to find where I'm at. I think giving you some space in the morning. When you're neurodiverse, you just want to just chill for a minute before you get into the action, I reckon. You don't want to be like, let's do some calculus, kids. It's 9 o'clock. Now, I want a brew first, miss. I want a cup of juice. I want to get in a little bit later. There's less kids. You're dealing with, oh, hello, how are you? I'm a social guy. I didn't mind talking to the reception staff. So I think later start times would have helped me, and I think it could help a lot of kids. Very interesting point. Have you got anything to add, Caprice?
Well, to that, I wanted to say, because being in wheelchairs, early starts are so much better for people, because getting to class is a little bit of a pain, rolling there and everything. And for people who have limited mobility, walking to class, having that early start gives them a break before class, whereas they're trying to rush in with all these students pushing and rushing around them. It won't be safe for most students. So I don't think I had early starts, but I got into school early just so I didn't have to be around people, and I would make it to my first class before anybody else.
Yeah. So you'd rather have early starts than later starts? Because
Yeah.
what she said was later starts. I think both could work either or, because obviously there's different types of people. Some of them, they activate more in the morning, but then there are the other side of the coin where people have settled. If you come in a little bit later, I reckon some kids will be more productive. They'll be more like, yeah, I'll go to school, it's not too early, I want to get up, I've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
I think it will help motivate a lot of kids, but the same thing with early starts.
Again, I didn't have later starts, but my fear is getting in trouble all the time, and as long as that is put in place, then that's okay. And I think that's a fear a lot of kids have as well.
Getting in trouble.
That if they start at a specific time because of their disability or because of their SEND, that their teachers won't be aware. But that's communication that needs to be put on the school and on the teachers.
Big factor, communication. But then she also mentioned, obviously we asked her about cost effective ways and things like that, and then one thing she brought up was the school uniform. Now it's very traditional, a lot of schools are still stuck in that need to wear a uniform, and it's very costly for parents to afford nowadays. Even back then it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and your kids are actually growing. That means a new school uniform every year.
There should be a guideline, I think, when if you're changing the school uniform,
There should be a dress code.
there should be a dress code, but there should
be able to wear more accessible clothing to you, things that don't
like
overstimulate you or overwhelm you.
Obviously, speaking about communication, very important in schools and in all environments when you're dealing with SEND children and adults. Very important, because a lot of people don't take them seriously, don't mollycoddle them, they'll think they're babies. All that kind of stuff has happened to me, personal experience. So it does start with education, not on the kids, but on the people working in those environments. And one of the really good conversations that we managed to grab, just take a listen to this. I'm not even going to add anything after it. I think we're going to discuss it because it was a very kind of detailed conversation that really sums up, I think, one of the main issues I had at school with communication. So just have a listen. Before we start, if you'd just like to introduce yourself and tell me a bit about what you've been doing today here.
I'm Sue Churchill. I'm the Deputy Manager of ROSI, which stands for Rodney House Outreach Service for Early Years. We work with children who have a disability or a development delay, birth to 5. So today we've come to listen to some of the workshops and the change programme for Manchester. So some of the workshops I've chosen was the family hubs, because our service is going to move into the family hubs. Neurodiversity in education, because our children, majority of them are neurodiverse and will be going into education. And the ordinarily available provision, because we work with early years settings as well to talk about the ordinarily available provision. And I was part of the co-production of that in its early days for early years.
Oh, okay, wonderful. With that being said, what's the most helpful or useful support you've ever seen in terms of inclusion?
I've been in this role now for 28 years, and so I've seen lots of staff come and go. And I think it's attitude of staff. So, some schools will say they'll be known to us that they're not very inclusive. Then they get a change of staff and they become very inclusive.
Okay, so it's a lot to do with how staff see it, and I guess depends on the staff you get, how their values come into play and actually shape the schools, because they might have views that aren't particularly forward thinking on disability and things like that, and then you can get a whole change of staff where they come in and it's all disability friendly. People that have a bit more, I guess, have had more education on disability rights than previous generations, which might still know about it, but it's not been talked about constantly, where now we've got great events like this where it's constantly being talked about. So even further in the future, people are going to be even better.
Yeah. And it's what I've come across, it's the unknown. So if you don't know about it, you have your barriers up until you do know about it, and then you realise what you can do and what change can happen.
So that interview that obviously I was speaking about before, hope you really enjoyed that. I think really insightful. There's not much we can add there, Caprice. Obviously she was talking about communication in schools, which we've said really important. She was talking about how some of the staff were what's the word, not educated and probably wasn't very inclusive because of the staff. And that can happen. Now, my school was very inclusive for the most part, but you did have a couple of them where you go, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? The next interview we did was with a lady who works in the post-16 sector. Again, very interesting points. But maybe before we let them listen to this, you want to give them a bit of context how your college experience was.
I went to a specialized college for specific my needs and before I knew I had autism, but I was still in a wheelchair, so I needed to go to a place where they would make reasonable adjustments for me. So I attended DISC, and I didn't even realize before I had my diagnosis of autism how freeing it is to have a specialized college specifically. My needs were met that I didn't know I had. I wasn't overwhelmed or stressed like I would have been at a mainstream college. And I did go to a mainstream college before, and I was like pushed with work that I couldn't complete. Deadlines were really hard for me because I couldn't communicate to my tutor my problems. But going to a specialized college helped me a lot post 16.
Listen to this interview and then I'll discuss with Caprice. Very quickly, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just briefly what you do.
Okay, I'm Rebecca Bromley Woods and I work in education in the post-16 sector.
With you working in the post-16 sector, what's the most helpful adaptation or support you've seen?
It's got to be about starting with the person in front of you. So find out about what they've done, what they can do, where they want to go, and make the curriculum fit. So far too often, the students have to fit the mould, and it's more important that the mould changes to fit the student.
Yeah, I agree. What are some free or inexpensive strategies schools could use or colleges to better support inclusion?
I think at every phase of education, they have policies, and I would strongly urge all leaders in education to just go back, revisit your policies and make sure that they're inclusive, non-punitive, and that they have the flexibility to be able to respond to situations when they arise.
So they've listened to the interview there we just did, and they were talking really interesting points. Obviously, there's not much to add there. I'm going to tell you a bit about my college experience, because obviously she was saying that it starts with the child. You got to speak with the student, you got to communicate with them. Again, it comes down to communication as a big factor. Now, you had a great college going to DISC, and I went to the pre-DISC, which was like the first thing. Very good, went there first, had a great year, very supportive. They know what they're doing, they're trained, they've got great communication with all types of people. But then I went on the other side of the coin and went to a mainstream college. Not so great. At the course, I loved the course, it was kind of cool, like, not that Digital Advantage and DISC wasn't, you knew at the end of it you were going to get a certificate, you were learning something specific, you didn't have to worry about client work and all things, so that it had its pros and cons, just like DISC, but there was more cons to that college experience because I don't think the communication was there with the staff.
Next, you'll hear from Laura from Send Families with Children with Disabilities, where she talks about her daughter and her experience being a Send mother.
Before we start, if you'd just like to introduce yourself and tell us briefly a bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Laura and I work for the SENDIAS service. So I work with families with children with disabilities and SEN. But I'm also a parent carer. So I've got 2 children with autism and EHCPs. So understand that side of it as well.
Okay, brilliant. With that being said, obviously with your children and things like that, working with a lot of SEND, what's the most useful or helpful support or adaptation that you've ever received?
Well, there has been a lot. And I think the number one thing for me to say is the most helpful support is can-do, solution-focused attitude from the SENCO and the SEN group about listening to what needs to be done and then just trying to be creative in terms of the solution. So there's been lots of things like my daughter sort of being supported to leave class early, my youngest daughter having difficulty with unstructured time at school. And this is before she had an EHC plan. And EHC plans don't really cover break time. But what they did is they understood what her issue was, and then saw who was available and set up play and games and arts and crafts clubs at lunchtime. So it was a bit more structured and she was less stressed out and she could play with her friends. So just looking at what's available, do we have someone to cover it? What is actually the need and what would meet that need?
So finding out what the child needs. In your case, it was your daughter needing activities and a break from a heavy workload.
Yeah, so my one daughter needed some time out, but another daughter with autism really struggled with the unstructured break time and joining in games and all that, and it was causing a lot of stress and affecting the rest of her day at school. And when they put this in place, it was her and other people who could access it. But it's just about having that, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, we don't offer that.
Yeah.
Just saying, okay, actually, this teacher is available on these 2 days. We can just do it on those 2 days. Let's see if it works. Let's see what happens. So that kind of attitude is really helpful.
So what are some free or inexpensive ways that we could better support inclusion?
So one of the things, I'm not sure about better support inclusion because it's just quite big, but I think inclusion means that identifying where there's struggle and actually putting something in place to kind of meet that. So maybe that goes away so it doesn't sort of get worse and worse. And one of the really cheap things for me was having a homeschool diary for my daughter. She really didn't tell me anything that was going on at school. I felt very separated from that, because she couldn't really communicate that. We had a homeschool diary. I just bought a notebook from the pound shop. The TA wrote in it, I wrote in it. She really understood what was happening with my daughter. They could support her more, like she had a bad night's sleep. She's been talking about this. They talked about things that she did well, which I could then bring up with my daughter. Everything was just better. And my daughter felt better as a consequence. So she was in primary school. And, that was just a book and people writing down with a biro. It changed everything.
So by you having that diary, you were able to open a line of communication with your daughter who you said struggles with communication. So that's, I think, a really effective way for people maybe to try if there's some parents with kids who have autism.
So that was the interview with Laura. Obviously, a very interesting point. She makes a point of, again, just brief over this communication, big thing. The other thing she makes a point of is doing little things, finding what staff are available, doing little things. In her example, she got them to do arts and crafts, and doing little activities, I think can help. I don't know what you think about that, but I think doing little activities and maybe distractions or just getting people involved in other ways where they can kind of do things they enjoy works.
Yeah, well, things like reading and processing information is difficult for a lot of SEND students. So getting to come out of class and relieve some stress in Laura's daughter's case, where she got to do some arts and crafts and bond with friends, that's a great way for her to calm down from overstimulation or being overwhelmed and be mentally ready in the next class, so she has the brain power to pay attention in her next classes. Or even just making sure you're not overwhelmed when you get home and you have your free time and everything. Having that little breather or playtime is nice for any age of any kid, honestly.
Exactly. And again, that's one of the ways, but we asked the question that we've asked pretty much everyone at this point, cost-effective ways that could help. Along those lines, things that are cost effective. She came up with a really interesting point using a notebook. So buying a cheap notebook, I think she said something from like Poundland or whatever. Why would you do that? What's the point? Because she can use that to give to the staff member that's with her child and they communicate through that. So obviously the mother's not going to be in the school with the child. The person that you're caring for, you're not going to be with them all the time. But someone might be, some staff might see them, so they could communicate, oh, it's been a good day, whatever, and then the mother could write back being, oh, it's been a tough morning, and then that's just good communication from parent to staff members. So maybe it's something you guys want to try. If you hear this and you've got a SEND child and you're a SEND parent, go out, get a notebook, or find a line of communication that can strengthen the communication from the child to the teacher or the child to the parent to the teacher. I think that can just trickle down and help the child's communication, because the parent obviously has great understanding because you're a parent of that child, but the teacher might not. But when you add that element of a notebook in, the communication with the teacher is just improved. You're telling the teacher your thoughts as a parent, your child when that child's at home, so that teacher now understands a little bit more, might have a bit more compassion, might be able to understand the child might notice that and then the child maybe becoming more open because you'll know it about a child had a tough day, things like that. So I think it's really important and a very good thing. And the last interview we did, Caprice, was with a lady called Nicola, who just made some general good points. It was less about communication and more about accessibility in general.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen.
If you would just like to introduce yourself before we start and tell me a bit about what you've been doing today or what you generally do.
Okay, so my name is Nicola, and I am a volunteer at Baker Greater Manchester Youth Network. So we're a group with of young disabled people, and we do politics stuff, we give opinion about our exchange, Manchester, to make it more disabled friendly.
Okay, so you're with the Greater Manchester Youth Network, and obviously, how would you make it more disabled friendly?
I make every building, I try to make the building more accessible for disabled people, and I would try to meet most of the disabled people needs, like your desk and comfortable, etc.
So getting them different things, like you said, lower desks, things like that. But out of everything you've seen and helped with, what's the most useful thing that you think has helped supported young people with disabilities?
I do a family hub workshop before, and they help a family with any job needs, they help with support for the family. I think they do help people with children and stuff with uniforms or school-related stuff.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
So you think Family Hub is the thing that's been very supportive to the young people? Great. What are some free or cheap ways do you think to help disabled people?
So I think buckets like transports, more ramps, more faces on the bucket and the taxis. I think they should be on the bus stop, but just tell you where you are rather than bus stop to press it. And I think there should be more braille everywhere for blind people.
Okay, so a bit like the trams, when the trams tell you where you're getting off, that would be good, wouldn't it, for the buses? And then I do agree with you with Braille, because you only have the pavements at the moment. It's the only Braille out there, so there's some very good ways, I think, of helping people with disabilities.
Thank you to Beck and the crew for heading out to MCCCPP Inclusion Group. A big thank you to everyone we interviewed from MCCCPP Inclusion Group. We're looking forward to bringing you more episodes. If you have any send opportunities or services you'd like us to cover, don't be afraid to get in touch. Follow us at MCR Local Offer Podcast on Instagram. Or if you want to be involved, email us at localoffer@digitaladvantage.org.uk.
I'm Beck,
And I'm Caprice.
And we'll see you next time.